Welcome everybody. I think we're live now. Yeah, the light says I'm live. Looks like we already got a good crowd over there going in the chat. Thank you all for joining tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about some common mistakes or goofs or whatever you want to call them that a lot of newbies might make. I've made pretty much most of the ones on my list here. And I thought I would just kind of share them because I know there's a lot of folks, people are building, getting their machines built every day. And, oh, there's Javi. Anyhow, yeah, so, like I said, I'm going to try to share these with y'all, and maybe that will help some of you from making the same mistakes that I have. And we'll get started here in just a sec. I do want to mention again, we've currently got the Gatton CNC Christmas Challenge going on. Today's the 15th and it ends the 24th. So what is that, 9 days, I think, left before that. So, get your video link sent to me. I've got one so far. So Rob Schuster, he's in the lead. He's in first place because that's the only one I've got so far. Anyhow, and another thing I wanted to mention too, we talked about laptops versus desktops and stuff the other day. Well, Michael Chipser's got a bunch of laptops in. And he's got a real good deal on them. So if you haven't, all right, Javi, let me, I sent you one earlier. Let me resend it for you, bud. I'll see if I can talk while I'm doing it at the same time. Michael Chipser posted on Facebook, and he got a big load of his laptops, and he refurbishes them and gets them loaded up, and they work great for running a CNC. And I do want to clear something up too. Let me send Bobby the link again. I want to clear something up. About 3 weeks ago, I think it was November 24th, when we did the show talking about laptops versus desktops. I think it was Michael Chipser that left the comment. He was talking, he said that he uses a laptop all the time, never has any issues on it. I don't want people to think you can't use a laptop. What I was trying to get across to folks is that if you're going to use a laptop, make that a dedicated computer for your machine and don't carry it back and forth, because if you carry it back and forth and you go out there to run the CNC and you turn the Wi-Fi and the screensaver and all that power stuff off, and then you carry it back in the house and you want to update your Facebook status or whatever, and you turn all that stuff back on, then you got to remember to turn it all back off and on. Well, Michael Chipser's an IT guy, so he's pretty slick with computers. It's probably not a big deal for him. But for just the normal Joe, it might be a pain in the butt to go back and forth turning it off. So that's why I was saying, if you are going to use a laptop, I would still highly recommend using it just on the CNC and just leave it out there. Leave everything connected up. That would be my bet. And keep the thing off the internet. We already gone through that. I'm not a fan of having a CNC or a computer that you're using to run your CNC on the internet. So, Javi's joined us now. Did you bring your hall pass?
I apologize, Dave. I was like watching a movie with the family. I expected it to end around 7:30 and just got a little late.
No worries. No worries. Family time is good. So no worries here. I was just telling the folks, and of course, I guess if you were out there at it on, you heard me. We're going to be talking about some of the boo-boos and stuff that I've made. And anybody out there in the chat can share theirs too if they want to fess up and talk about them. But I made a big list. I actually started out jotting down stuff on this this notepad right here, and then I thought, well, I better open up Notepad or something and type it up a little neater so I can add to it. So I just basically left that app open the last couple of days, and every time I think of something, I'd come over here and add it. So I think they're talking about Michael.
Yep, they're talking about Chipser.
Chipser, yes, Chipser, Chipser. If you want to look him up on Facebook, you can't miss him. And like I said, he's got a bunch of those, and he's selling them even cheaper than he did. And I've still got the one that I bought from him. I bought 3 or 4 different things from Michael, and they're top notch. He goes through them and fixes them up right. So anyway, let's start off with some of these things. Now, some of these things I'm going to talk about may not even apply to you, depending on what kinds of bells and whistles you have on your machine. But the stuff that I'm talking about here is going to be from way back when I first started playing around with a CNC, a home-built CNC, I guess is what you'd call it. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. And like I said, if anybody has any questions about anything, feel free to throw them in the chat there. I think, Javi, Mike Murray may be joining us too. He was at an event with the fireman thing.
Right.
Christmas.
Yeah, he should be coming in later. If he doesn't come in too late, expect him in. Yeah,
I sent him the link, so he may be joining us as well. Anyhow, let's start off talking about some of these. But now these first 9 or so are really, they're not really in any kind of order or anything, but this is just stuff that I have done way back in the day, and still occasionally might do them too. Yeah. But the first one, now, again, this is if you're a brand new, you got your CNC running.
Let's see if I can match you mistake for mistake.
Yeah, okay. You don't have any homing switches, limit switches, touch plate, none of those bells and whistles. You're not using any of those.
All right.
But one that I used to do more than I care to admit, really, is when you're setting the Z0, and I've even done videos on this once I finally got the hang of it and started showing people how I do it. Back when you're setting your Z0 and you're using the old piece of paper trick and stuff like that, and you move your bit over your little X that you put on your material, and you get ready to lower the Z down. So you shut off your controller and you grab that little phenolic knob that you have on top, and you lower it down, and you get the piece of paper just right. And then you reach over and you hit, click 0Z. So you've set your 0. And then you forget to turn the damn controller back on. And you hit page up as you're getting ready to start the router. And that's not really a big deal if you realize it, and all you got to do is hit 0 to Z again, because the Mach 3 or UCCNC, whichever one you're using, it's going to go up however long you held that button up for. Well, if you don't re-zero it and go whoops, and then turn the controller on, and well, now the bit is still at 0, and you raise it up a ½ inch. Well, maybe you already, when you held the button down, it already went a half. So it just gets everything all confused. Now that the Z doesn't really know where it's at. And if you want to plunge something smack into some material and mess up a workpiece, that is the way to do it.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that turning off the controller. I've got a story for the crowd. You've heard it and you laughed at it, and I'll give them the short version. Some time ago, I had an issue when I was putting on the remote control switch to my VFD, and it stopped working. It was a bad contact. But then I decided to take it all apart. When I put the new switch on, because the old switch was bad, I put a new switch on. I went through the whole process, taking it apart, everything. Long story short, it didn't work when I turned it back on. Nothing worked. And lo and behold, I took the entire VFD apart. So much, up to the point where I almost desoldered a board to see if there was some magic fuse underneath that I could fix or anything. Put it all back together, just about giving up. And then I looked over. I had my computer on. I had my controller in my hand moving everything. I had the VFD turned on, and it wouldn't move. I looked over and I saw the switch to the controller was off the whole entire time.
Yeah, that's I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Just chalk it up as a lesson and go on, I guess.
And the good part is when something happens that serious, when something happens to that extent, it ingrains it in your mind more. I've never had the controller off since.
Yeah.
The bigger the mistake, the bigger the learning.
Yep. Well, that to me, that's why I want to kind of have a show like this where I talk about some of the stupid things I've done, because I've, I don't really do them much anymore because I've been doing this a long time. But
yeah.
But a lot of the new folks, and like I said, I know how many things I've sold here lately, and I know there's a bunch of new folks that are getting their machines up and about ready to start running. And maybe this will, maybe if they watch this show, they'll go, oh, yeah, I remember Dave talking about what an idiot he was doing that. So, maybe it'll save somebody some grief. But anyway, another one here is, let's see, let me read what I wrote so I can remember what I was saying here. When running a program with bit changes, you change the bit, but you forget to reset the 0, because every time you pull, unless you got one of them really highfalutin machines that's got the automatic tool changer, every time you change the bit, you're not going to stick the new one in the same height.
Yep.
So you got to reset that Z. So if, regardless of whether you're using the paper method or a touch plate or whatever, you still got to set the Z. So that's another one that can screw up a project.
Yeah, absolutely. I've actually done that. So many years operating this machine, which is all automatic. When I built the Gatton, I have yet to put the automatic changer on it, and I've made that mistake more than once, and I continue to make it because when you swap from one machine to another, even though I haven't turned that one on in 3 months, but
you get used to doing stuff, and that's how, like I said, when you make these mistakes, you make them once and you get mad, and another week later you might make it again, and after a while, that's how you learn. It'll stick in your head. You're like, oh man, last time I did that, I screwed up a piece of material. So you start getting it down after a while.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so you got to reset the Z on when you change the bit.
Yep.
Here's another one that says using different programs for different bits. In other words, if you use a different tool path for your bits instead of putting it all in one program, you got to make sure that you remember, if you run the first program and say it's using a V bit, and then the second program is going to use say a 1/4-inch end mill or something. Well, when you swap that bit out and re-zero it, you still got to remember to load that second program. And sometimes you get excited trying to finish up something, especially if it's that last one, you might forget to load the program in. So that's really the 3 main things you have to do. Change the bit, get the right bit in there, set the Z, and make sure you have the right program in the pulled up. Another one, I don't know if this one will apply to very many people. It does to me, and I get any questions about what I'm talking about, I'll be happy to explain. But when you're using a single part program to run multiple parts, you move to the new position, but then you forget to hit the X and or the Y 0. And what I mean by that is when I run, I'm going to pretend this is like an antique. And check this out. Cassette tape. I'm going to pretend that this is one of my clamps. You know, I have programs where when I throw a piece of plywood on the machine, if there's any little drop space, I always try to run some extra clamps because you can never have too many clamps. So I have a single part program that runs them this way, and then I have another one that's at 90 degrees that runs it this way. So rather than trying to figure out all these little drop places, because they may be all over the place, I just pull up that single part program, either this one or this one. And then if I say, well, okay, I can squeeze 4 of those things vertically over there, I'll run that single part program, and then I just use an MDI command to move it over. And that's what I'm talking about. Once you move it over, then you got to re-zero. Like if I move it over on the X, I got to re-zero the X and hit cycle start. Run it, move it over on the X, hit, re-zero, hit cycle start. So that's what I'm talking about. You have to remember to, before you hit that cycle start, to make sure you re-zero whichever axis you've moved.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a habit of doing Z, then X, then Y on a regular basis at the start of every toolpath. Well, unless I have multiple toolpaths, which it's all automatic. But I can't say I've done that with a cassette, but I have a reel-to-reel that
we're going to show off all our old antiques on that show. It's like that show on Georgia Public Television, Antique Roadshow.
I figure I'd bring back some memories for us.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, while I don't think I wrote this one down, as a matter of fact, I think this is one of them I thought of and it wasn't out here to write it down. But since I mentioned MDI, that's another thing. I would learn as a newbie, learn to use that MDI, figure out how it works, and learn that. That's a very powerful feature in Mach 3 and UC CNC and probably Linux too. I don't know about Linux, but if Rob Schuster or let's see, who else runs Linux? Alan Kreifels, I think. If you guys are out there, let me know about that. But I'm sure it probably has an MDI command of something. So learn to use it. That's a good thing.
Yeah. By the way, Mark Lindsay, I just have to respond to this because it's a challenge. Mark Lindsay asked me to show the player. I don't know if you could see it, Mark. Wait, there it is.
Yep, reel to reel. Sony.
I just figure, he set a gauntlet down, so I.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Another one that's easy to screw up on is when you're running a tool path that's a V-carve tool path. It's real easy to reach in your drawer and go, yeah, there's a V-bit, and you grab it and you put it in. Well, maybe it was supposed to be a 60-degree V-bit, and you grabbed a 90-degree V-bit. Not that I've ever done that, but
oh no, never. I've never done that.
Especially if it's supposed to be a 60 and you put in a 90, now you're going to have a big fat.
Right. Yeah. Luckily, I've made the mistake the other way more often than.
Yeah, if you go the other way, you can kind of save it if you catch it early enough. But yeah, you go the wrong way. Yeah, that's another one. And while we're talking about V-bits, when you say, another thing you can do, and maybe confusing for some of the new guys, is I went out to my drawer a while ago when I looked through, because I was trying to find the little plastic cases that the bits come in, because they have all the information about the bit, you know, then that's what you'll put in your tool database. And I couldn't find any. I've got where when I open one up now, I throw those away. I used to hang on to them for a while, but I've been throwing them away here lately. But a lot of times, and I don't know which tool companies it is, but sometimes they'll have a bit and it'll say that it's 45 degree. But what they really mean, Ian, as far as Vectric is concerned, it means that it's 45 from the vertical this way, which means it's the same thing over here on this side. So it's an included angle of 90 degrees.
Yep.
And, you know, so if you're, you know, somebody new grabs that case and they're getting the information off that and they see angle, they may put 45 degrees in there. Well, then if that's a 90 degree V bit, it's not going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good tip. If you other than the end mills, which are standard, and you should always measure new end mills with a caliper just to make sure they're there. I bought a 1/4 inch end mill that was considerably less than a quarter. It was like 3/16. But I had a roundover bit. And they stated one thing on the box, the full diameter, and it was actually half that diameter. So always keep a close eye on the height, the widths, and make sure your tool, what's that called, Dave? The tool design, the tool profile matches the tool.
Yeah, and if you look, I was looking earlier, but if you look in Vectric, well, probably any of the Vectric products, when you go to the tool database and you click on a V bit, it says included angle, and then it shows a little diagram showing both sides of that is what they're talking about. So you just have to watch that, because like I said, so I have gotten bits where it'll say, you know, it's a 30 degree angle, but what it really means is it's 60 degree included angle. So you just have to make sure you have all your tools, not just your V bits, but all of those entered into the tool database correctly, or you won't get the desired results. And since we're talking about V bits too, and I saw Peter out there earlier, I don't know if he's still around. Peter did an excellent video on how to set up your V bits to check when it's 90 degrees, make sure it's 90 degrees and not 89.5 or 89 or whatever.
Yep.
So if you do have it set up correctly as far as what, you know, you think it's supposed to be, like a 90 degree, but you're still not getting the, you know, right results. Peter's got a good video on showing you how to check that out. Okay, moving on. I'm still pretty much on all of the stupid ones that I've done. If you need to change something about a tool, like the feed rate, depth per pass, plunge rate, etc., for a particular tool path, in other words, you just need to change the parameters of that tool just for this one thing that you're doing. Make sure over in VCar Pro, or I'm assuming it's the same on all the Vectric products, instead of hitting the select tool, which takes you into the database, hit the edit button, and then you can change the parameters of that tool, like I said, like the feed rate, plunge rate, depth per pass, and stuff like that. And it only applies to that particular tool path. So you're leaving the database alone. You're not messing up the parameters you have for that tool.
Dave, I'm sorry to interrupt. I was trying to post Peter's number 51 episode on V-Bits, and for some reason or another, I don't know, I might not be logged in, or there's an issue with the it blocked the
can you put a comment in there and let me make sure your moderator's turned on? Just put anything.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't see the ranch. Hold on.
Yes. Strange. I don't believe I logged into a different account. Oh, YouTube and their wonderful.
Okay, now you're a moderator, so now you should be able to.
And Peter's video.
Should be able to do it.
There we go. Appreciate that.
All right. Okay, let's see. Where were we? Okay, so everybody understand that you use the edit button instead of the select tool button. And that will allow you to change just for that tool path. And that's a handy thing too. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's another one is when starting a program, make sure your Z0 matches what you have in the program. In other words, in the program, or at least in the Vectric products, you select, in fact, that's the first thing you do when you're putting your blank size and all that in there. You select whether it's going to be the material surface or the machine bed. Well, you can't program it for the machine bed and then set your 0 on top of the material. You know, it's got to be set the same way. So if you're not sure, the easy way to check without really going back into Vectric to do it is, if you're in Mach 3, you can just click on that toolpath thing and you can look at the extents, or you can probably just scroll down, you know, the top of the program has all those notes. It has the, you know, the tool and stuff, which also is a good thing. Like I mentioned, make sure your tool matches. All you got to do is scroll down a little bit to see, you know, if you're not sure if that, you know, if you programmed it a few days ago and you're not sure whether you used a 60-degree or a 90-degree V-bed, all you got to do is scroll down and it'll be at the top of the program. And then you can check that. So, but yeah, you got to make sure your Z0, where you set it in the program, matches where you're putting it on your machine. And kind of going along with that one, when you're starting a program, you got to make sure that your XY datum matches what you put in the program. You know, if you programmed it in the center, like I like to do, in the center of the workpiece, and then you go to set the 0 and you set it over on the left-hand side, lower left-hand corner or something, not gonna work. Got to make sure they match. And again, you can look at the little display window in Mach 3. It has the crosshairs, and that's how you can tell when you're off. That's just at a quick glance, you can tell, you know, how you've got it set up in the program. Or again, you can go to that tool path and look at the extents, because if you have it set up in the center of your program, you know, your X minus and X positive should pretty much match, and you know that it's in the center. If it's lower left, it's going to be the X is at 0 and then however far that way it goes. So what's all the Allen wrench stuff?
Oh, back when Mark said I lost my wrench, and I said, it's okay, I have a muscle chuck.
Oh, okay. I get it now.
But technically, Allen wrench is also a wrench, so, and I need one of those for the muscle chuck, but never mind.
Yeah, unless you're in Europe, they call them keys. I don't
really.
Yeah, I don't understand why.
I did not know that one.
Yeah. I used to, when I worked at a place, we had a big piece of equipment, and it was from Italy, so they had Italians over here, and they called wrenches and Allen things keys. Instead of, you know, he'd say, give me the key. And you know, most of these guys didn't even speak any English. He'd say, give me a key. And I'm like, you know, I'm like, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean key? And then he'd walk over and he'd grab a wrench and he'd hold it up and he'd go key. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. All righty. Let's see. Okay. I've got another one here. This one I have not done, but I know of somebody that has done it. They told me they did it. In fact, they probably said it on this show, but I won't mention their name. I'll save them some embarrassment. But that is if you, let's see. Oh, I think I skipped one. If you're using a 2-wire touch plate, you know, with an alligator clip, I use one all the time out there. Mine's just a piece of aluminum angle. But if you're using the 2-wire touch plate with an alligator clip attached to the router bit, make sure you remove the alligator clip before you turn that router on. I mean, that seems pretty common sense, but I'm guessing that if you have your router set up to run with your, with through Mach 3 or something, you might forget to disconnect that alligator clip, and I would imagine
have a nice coiled wire around your router bit.
Yeah, I imagine it would wind it up pretty quick. But okay, now I did skip over this one, and I actually did this one the other day. And this is if you're, and you just mentioned the muscle chuck too. If you don't get your router bit tight enough in the router or the spindle, you may turn it on and it may cut fine for a little bit, and then after a while that router bit starts
to run out,
starts slipping down.
Yeah,
I'll share this quick story with you. I was cutting a Gatton CNC kit. I know, big surprise there. I was cutting one the other day, and I had my my little tablet set up on the counter beside my recliner, and I had my camera going, so I'm watching it cut. I go out there. I started up and run, and it started running fine. I always check the first part or so to make sure everything's. I take my calipers when it makes that first pass. I know how deep it's supposed to go, so I'll measure with the calipers and make sure it's about right. And anyway, so I was been sitting in the recliner watching the thing run on my little tablet, and the dogs decided they needed to go out or something. So I go out the back door, and I was getting ready. I keep a baseball out there on the thing. Jack loves to run after the baseball, so I grabbed the ball and was getting ready to throw it. Well, and unfortunately, I was just outside the door where I could still hear the spindle good, and I thought, man, something doesn't sound right. So I threw the ball so he would run, come back in the house, run out to the garage, and sure enough, I didn't tighten it enough, or I don't know whether I pushed the bit maybe too far into the collet, and it that way when you tighten it, it feels like it's tight, but it slips. I don't know, but anyway, it had slipped down, and if I had, and fortunately, there's a lot of times when after it's already run several parts. This was like it messed up on like the 8th part, so it had been running a while, and fortunately, it wasn't one of those times where I go out to check on the chickens, or because a lot of times I go out there and I might be out there 5 minutes or so and then come back in. So, because it was buried in there. I mean, it was still cutting, going right through it, but it was
sticking out quite a bit,
and it was leaving a mark on the big brown mark on the stuff, burning it up. So, fortunately, I happened to be at the right place at the right time, I guess. So.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, next time you tell that story, embellish it a little and say, I threw the baseball and Jack came back with something in his mouth, but it didn't look like a baseball. It was my router bit.
Nah, but yeah, I don't know what happened. I think that I may have pushed that thing in the collet too far, and because I'm pretty good about tightening.
Yeah, when it tightened, it didn't tighten on the collet.
Yeah, I'm thinking it felt like it tightened, but it didn't. You know what I mean? And then later on, after running 7 or 8 parts, it finally started pulling it out.
Yeah, that's the one thing, and I always say it, and then I'm not a. I mean, I wish I was a. I wish I had them as a sponsor, but because I'm so loyal to them, but I have yet to have one bit run out on me on the muscle chuck, and one time I had maybe 3/8 of an inch of the tip of a 1/4 inch bit, and that was with the reducer. I cranked it down good, but didn't run out on me. That muscle chuck is just the way it is. It's because it clamps this way as opposed to the using a collet.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah,
so that's one added benefit.
Yeah, I have one out on one of the other machines with my Porter cable, and I like it pretty well. It works good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Where were we? Okay, we've got that one. We got that one. Okay, now this one. I hope I don't piss anybody off here, but this really isn't a mistake, I guess. It's just something I wanted to mention, and that's when you get your machine going, and you're brand new and all this. Please don't be one of those people that I call the gimme people. You know what a gimme people is?
Oh yeah, give me a design for this. Give me a design for this. Give me a design. Why'd you bother buying a machine?
It's the people that get a machine and get it going, and then every time somebody posts a project, can you give me the files for that? Gimme. You know, so what I'm getting at is learn how to draw stuff. You will enjoy your machine so much more when you can do a lot of this stuff yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you got a machine, you built one or whatever. Learn how to draw. Don't rely on
none of us in the community mind teaching you how to fish, but we're not going to catch them for you.
There's tons of tutorials out there. Javi does them. Mark Lindsay does them. Laney Shaughnessy does them.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff on YouTube already by Vectric and whatever. Learn how to draw. Don't be one of them gimme people. So
plenty of forums out there. Also, Matt with his Illustrator and Adobe classes could teach you the basics of vectors. I mean, there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, it's almost, information overload.
And I can put myself in their position because I don't want to take the time to learn complicated 3D modeling. I know how to do simple stuff, but the heavy duty Fusion 360 modeling for the 3D printer. So I always look, there's so many things on Thingiverse, I always look for that thing first, but I'm not going to go out and ask people for designs and things like that. For that, I just won't print anything.
Yeah. And while we're talking about getting files from other people, here's another thing that you should, if you're new at this, you should do it like this. If somebody sends you if they go, oh yeah, I'll be happy to send you the file, and they send you the VCAR file, be careful. Be careful. I prefer when somebody says, give me a file for something, I always just say, well, don't send me the VCAR, just send me the DXF or, whatever the vector image is. And I'll do my own stuff, because if they send you the VCAR file, one, you may not have the exact same tooling that they're using. One, maybe you're used to setting it up in the center of the material and you don't know it, or don't catch it, that they set it up on the lower there's just all kinds of things you have to check.
Yeah, there's so many combinations. They may not be the right VCarve version. They're not all compatible with each other. It might be using a different tool. It might be using a different wood, a different machine. Possibilities are endless for someone to.
So many things that can go wrong.
Yeah.
If you're going to take a file from somebody, I would delete their tool paths and start over. Like, you've got the artwork there, whatever. You don't have to start from scratch. Yep. But do your own programming for your machine. Okay, let's see here. Have I pissed anybody off yet?
Not me.
Okay, well, it's still early,
Oh yeah,
I can. All right, let's see. Where was I? Oh, here's another one that's kind of a tip or something that newbies may or may not do really well. Really pay attention to the simulation when you program your stuff and you do that simulation in VCAR Pro. I know on mine, just pretty much all my computers are fast enough that that thing just flies. So I'll take that little slide bar and I'll slide it all the way over as slow as it'll go. And sometimes you can even stop it and back it up. And I don't know what all, but you know, you really need to pay attention and watch what that's doing, because if you zoom in, we can get a good look at things and really watch the way it moves. That may save you some headache when it gets out to your machine, because you may see something there. I mean, that's the whole point of the simulation. That's what it's there, not just to show you what the finished part's going to be like, but how it's going to do it, how it's going to make that. So, I mean, you might find it when you do it, you go, wait a minute, I forgot to put a tab. I'm cutting this big piece out, and I forgot to put a tab or something to hold it. So when it cuts loose, it's going to go flying out of there. You know, don't ask me how I know that one, but yeah. So pay attention to the simulation. Don't be afraid to zoom in and check stuff out close, because that's
speaking of simulations, if you're using any of the Vectric software, if you do not do a preview, reset the preview toolpath and preview all the paths, if you don't do that before every job, then it's, I don't want to talk to you. I mean, it's
really to me, an easier way to see it more clearly is, like you said, you can hit and preview all toolpaths, but I would just select the first one you're going to run, preview it,
right,
and hit the second one, preview it, because it's basically going to run this just like your machine is out there. So
and those are mistakes that I made early on when I would adjust the tool. I would actually at the end of a job, the tool path was perfect. Well, guess what I did? I decided to move the entire piece to center it so the tool wouldn't nick the corners or nick my where do I have that? Here we go. So the tool wouldn't nick this thing. and lo and behold, I forgot to recalculate. And so if you didn't recalculate and preview all your tool paths prior to saving your or to running your job, then you're doing a lot of work for nothing, because I shifted it, but the original tool path was still, well, as you can see, too close to the clamps.
Yeah. That just made me think of another one that I don't think I had wrote down here, but also too, you got to remember, and I hate to pick on my buddy Jim, but I know he doesn't watch the show, so I'm gonna pick on him. He is, and if you don't know who my buddy Jim is, he's my electrician friend. And when I did the build for the video series, the Gatton CNC, he's the one that got that machine. I built it and gave it to him in exchange for all the electrical help he gives me. And even now, he don't run them every day like I do. But the poor guy, he still has problems remembering that in VCar Pro, you have to save the VCar file, and you also have to save the tool. He'll program stuff, save the tool path, and then exit out, and he forgets to save the VCar file, and then all the changes that he made are not saved. And anyway, so yeah, you got to make sure you save both of those files. Let's see. We've talked about the simulation. Okay, here's a good one. Until you get some experience running your CNC machine, you should set the Z-axis 0 about an inch or two above the material.
Yeah.
And do what I call dry run or cutting air.
Cutting air.
You know, because you've got it, as long as you got your X and Y 0 set, and then you raise it, you know, you could go ahead and bring it down, get it right on your material and all that, but then raise it up, maybe even a couple of inches, hit the 0 again on just the Z, and don't even turn the router or spindle on, just hit cycle start and watch that thing move.
Well, Dave, I'll share something with you. Many years in the engraving business, and obviously, you know, my rotary engraver is is basically a small version. It is a CNC. It's a small version of a big router. I and two other friends of mine who own engraving companies in Miami, who I've gotten to know in the industry very well, all three of us, prior to any job, before wasting any material, before engraving on, and it could be an acrylic piece that's worth $30, which is decent money, and you lose all your profit. We always, every one of us, will air cut just to make sure our limits are correct, and we'll do the whole job. You know, better safe than sorry. And I mean, if you don't mind constantly clamping and it's cheap wood, well, have at it. But if you're working with some fancy exotic hardwood or something, and you don't want to trash it, it's a great practice.
Yeah, and like I said, the simulations help you to spot some things that could be a problem, but doing the air cutting will help you spot something that the simulation won't show you. And that is, I'm going to pretend like this is a blank. And let's say that I set my 0 datum over here in the lower left-hand corner. Okay. But I also clamp it here on the sides. Okay. So now you've got clamps right here and here. Well, when that thing finishes, depending on where it finishes cutting, if it finishes over here, you got to remember, as soon as it gets done, it's heading back home to the 0, 0. And
if you have it set up that way, but yes.
Yeah, well, most people probably run it that way because I think that's the default in Vectric. Mm-hmm. But, you know, so when it gets done, and if it's only raising up, you know, whatever, if you leave it to default, I think the default in Vectric is like 20 millimeters, 0.787, I think. Well, maybe you've got a clamp with a knob or something sticking up on it. Well, the machine doesn't know that clamp's there. So it's going to take a beeline. It takes the straightest path to that. So if it finishes over here, you know, no matter where it finishes, if that path means it's going over a clamp, you better hope you got it high enough. Well, if you're air cutting and you're paying attention, watching it, you can see, I go, oh, I better make sure I've got that high. So then you can measure how tall your clamp sticks up and, you know, change your safe Z height or whatever. So that's why air cutting is important. Another thing is maybe you're air cutting and you're like, well, wait a minute, the router's way out here, it's off the material. So then you can check and see what's wrong with that. Maybe you didn't have your 0 set quite the right place or whatever. Maybe you measured wrong when you were putting your little mark on the material or whatever. Another thing about the clamp thing, that's why, well, there's a lot of reasons why, but that's one of the reasons why I almost always set mine in the center of the material, because no matter where it's cutting, when it finishes, now it's going back to the center of material. It's not going over any clamps. You don't have to even think about it. It's never going to hit the clamps going that way. Okay, let's see. Getting near the end of my last list here. Okay, now this is, anybody that's followed me for very long knows that I don't like to talk about feeds and speeds. I hate talking about feeds and speeds. I get, you know, throw them charts and stuff out. They're no good.
Yep.
Here, you know, but here's the thing. If you're a new person, don't call Javi and say, hey, Javi, what feed rate should I use for this? And he says, well, gosh, I run 200 inches a minute. So like, okay, well, Javi runs 200 inches a minute. I can run 200 inches a minute. Well, maybe he wasn't talking about the same material, the same bit, the same depth of pass, all that kind of stuff. Be conservative in your initial settings. You know, I would say probably you're safe to go with like 50 inches a minute. And as a rule of thumb, you know, most people will say, well, half the diameter of the bit. Well, if you're new, I would say even half of that. just till you get the hang of stuff. It's so much easier to speed up and go deeper,
Yep.
And all that once you know what's going on. But don't try to start off hogging out. You're just going to.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. When it comes to feeds and speeds, I have one remark and one remark only. If you are a newbie, the first act you should do on your CNC, or if you've just built one and you have a new CNC, if you have a new machine, or even sometimes in some cases a new bit, run feeds and speeds tests. Cut strips, go deep, go faster, go slower. Learn what your own machine on your own material is with your own bit is capable of, because everyone's different.
Yeah, if you set conservatively, Mach 3 and UC CNC and probably every other controller software out there has a way to speed it up on the fly. So if you set something at 50 inches a minute at, say, 3/16 or not 330 seconds deep, and it's cutting, and you go, wow, it seems like it's not, laboring at all doing it. So you just start hitting the thing, the little up button on the feed override. And then when you used to go, wait a minute, now it sounds like it's starting to chatter. Back it back off about 10 or 15%. There you go. That's your sweet spot. Now, if you change the depth of cut, if you change it where you're not cutting as deep, now you can go faster.
And one thing that people don't take into account, most people, including experienced users, although they should know better, is you should get a little infrared for one of those laser thermometers. They're really, really cheap, unless you want to use your hand and risk it. Check the bit after a job. Check the heat of the bit while you're doing your feeds and speeds. Also check on the heat, because the main reason they have all those feeds and speeds charts are to get not only clean cuts and the fast amount of cut and but it's also for cooling. In aluminum, the actual bits dissipate the heat from the the shavings from the aluminum dissipate the heat from the bit. And same thing happens with wood to a lesser degree. But I've had some jobs where a sharp bit will be burning to my hand, and I've had other jobs where I've had a dull bit and I could grab it and it's cool to the touch. It all depends on how you run your machine, but you should know that in regards to heat, because that's probably the biggest way to dull a blade faster.
Yeah, when I first started playing around with CNC, like I said, I've been doing this a long time, but when I first started, I built that metal sidewinder. I used to program everything with a plunge rate of 20 inches a minute and a feed rate of 50. I very seldom ran anything at 50, but I always started there and then would bump it up. And then if it got to where, hey, I'm running this all the time and I know it cuts good at 70 or 75, then I'll go in and change that and start programming it at that. But it's so much easier to go faster that, once you set it up to fly and it doesn't work, you probably wasted that workpiece, but you can always speed things up or take deeper cuts after the fact. And I've always been very conservative with my feeds and speeds. I always like to go probably a shallower cut than most people, but
Yep.
then I make up for it with the feed rate. I'd rather go fast than light cuts. And the main reason for that is most of the time, like I've said 100 times, I'm not watching my machine. I'm not going to sit there and look at it. I know CNC stuff is cool for some folks. I'm over it. I don't want to sit there and watch it. I got other things to do. So I want to make sure it runs. So if I get those settings or a sweet spot and I know I can hit the button and go off and sand or whatever else I'm doing, as long as I can hear it, that's all I need. I just need to be able to hear the spindle or the router, whichever it might be. So So in other words, learn your feeds and speeds, but don't learn them off some stupid chart. Learn them by actually doing it. That's
$9.99 is one of those infrared thermometer guns. I'm sure next week Dave will have an Amazon link on his page for it, but it's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah. I don't have one of those, but
it's handy. It's surprising sometimes. Some jobs I go, oh my God, I didn't realize I was running it so hot, and then this is the part where you have to think about it and go, what did I do wrong? And try different things. But I mean, it's a fast way to dull a bit. And well, if you don't mind spending $25 or $50 or $60 every other job, but it's
another thing, I'm getting near the end of my list here, which I think we're about good on time too.
Yeah.
Another thing too is that newbies may have a hard time, getting used to, and that's particularly if they're, I won't say cheap, let's say frugal. That's a better word. If they're frugal, they spend money, trying, spend a little as possible, trying to keep the wife happy or whatever, and they got the machine built and all, and you buy some bits. A $20 bit doesn't last forever. Learn that.
Yeah.
When you're not getting the good quality on a cut, it's time to buy another bit.
Yeah.
Folks.
Get a new bit, and it's not like a chainsaw where you can just sharpen it and it'll still cut a tree down fresh. When you sharpen a bit, every time you sharpen it, you're shaving off the diameter of the bit. I mean, on the easy bits, on like the flat end mills. And you're making it smaller. So if you're looking for precision, you're going to lose it every time.
I know a lot of people talk about sharpening bits and stuff, but other than a bit that's got a flat surface, I don't even think, like the up spirals and down spirals and all, I don't even think about getting somebody sharpening them. They're not that expensive. Now, having said that, there's a reason why some bits are on eBay or whatever are $5, and Whitesides and Freud's and CMTs and that are $20 and $25 for the same bit. You've got to spend a little bit of money. You don't have to buy the super high dollar ones. Yeah. But the more money you spend on a bit, usually I found the longer it lasts. And I use, my three favorites are the ones I just mentioned. CMT is probably my all-time favorite out of those three.
CMT is a great value because you don't have to spend the money on an Amana bit, and it also depends on, I would say it also depends on what you're cutting. If you're doing nothing but hardwoods and it's pristine wood all the time, and you're very good about not making mistakes, by all means, buy the most expensive bit that money can buy, the highest quality bit. Go for an Amana or something high up there. But if you're doing plywood all the time, I mean, you're basically taking the Mercedes of bits and using it like a Volvo, like a Volkswagen. I mean, you're basically you are dulling it faster than normal. You will probably get better value from a lesser quality bit. Obviously, not a Vermont American, but
yeah, Vermont American. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So use sharp tooling. Like I said, don't buy a tool and think it's going to last forever, because it's not. Figure that into your budget when you're, if you're making stuff to sell, you got to figure that into your cost of doing business.
Mm-hmm.
Mark
brought up a great point about he sharpens his V bits, and that is one exception. That is a good exception. It's very simple to sharpen a V bit. It's you take it across the diamond honing saw or one of the honing saws, as long as it's very flat. 4 passes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. If you got something that's got flat like that,
And you will never, the beautiful thing about the V-bit is, even if you shave off, you're shaving off evenly amongst the whole thing. So it's still going to be a 45 degree is still a 45 degree. 90 is still a 90, you know, as long as you hone it flat. Whereas if you have a 2 fluted straight bit, yes, they're very easy to shave, to hone, but every time you do so, you are decreasing the diameter of that bit. Whereas in a V bit, you aren't. I mean, well, you are, but it doesn't matter because it's angular. Don't know if anybody understood that, but
I did. Yeah. So, like I said, spend buy a good quality bit, not necessarily super high dollar, but you can, you'd be surprised when you use it. If you're used to using the little cheap bits and then you finally get a good one, you're like, man, makes a big difference. Also, one last thing here I'm going to talk about in cheap or free software isn't always a bargain. There's a reason why Mach 3 costs what it does. There's a reason why UC CNC costs what it does. I'm not against folks, using the freeware or stuff like that to get started. But, use that to learn your CNC, and then to really, get good things out of that CNC. Get some software with some features. I'm super big fan of.
You've got all the time in the world, and by all means, go for the cheap stuff. But I don't. I like to enjoy my time.
Yeah, and that that's just not controller software, but programming software as well. A lot of folks balk at the Vectric price, and I always say, once you get it and use it, you swear they should charge twice as much as what they do for it, because I love the stuff. I'll just tell you,
I got so used to the Vectric software that and manipulating nodes and vectors that I started whenever I had something for my vinyl cutter, for instance. I don't use that software as often, and I was very, very proficient at it in its heyday. But now, on occasion, I'll just use the Vectric software to tweak any vectors and just export it as a DXF or as another vector, and so it's become a tool not even for my own CNC, but for the other machines.
Yeah, Jerry Brown has a good comment. He says he doesn't do cheap bits or cheap booze.
There you go.
Words to live by, right there, Jerry. I'm telling you. All right, that's pretty much all I had on my list. I know there's probably a couple that I thought of and didn't get them wrote down before I forgot them again. So, anybody got any questions? We'll do a little quick Q&A for a few minutes if anybody's got any questions about anything we've talked about or about the CNC challenge going on.
Stephen was asking if you can program a default process for all jobs to raise a few inches before going home.
Well, yeah, you can. You remember how we did the show
on G-Code?
On G-Code. I don't remember how many weeks ago that was. That's another great reason to learn a little bit about G-Code. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure by default, when you get Vectric and install it, I think they have the Safe Z, or the, how much it raises up at the end of the program, set to 20 millimeters, which is 0.787, a little over 3/4 of an inch. You can either change that number in Vectric, or if you only need to do it for one thing, you can post that, load it into Mach 3, click edit the code, go all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see where it says Z 0.787. Just change that to 1.5 inches or whatever you need to clear whatever it is you're trying to clear, clamp or who knows what. So yeah, it's not hard to do. It's just remembering to do it. That's the key. Most of these things I've talked about, these mistakes, ones that I made, is because I forget stuff. And of course, I'm even older now, a lot older now than I was when I started. So it's even more of an issue. I have to really be paying attention. I know when somebody comes over, they want to see the machine run or something, a lot of times I have to be super careful then, because I'm distracted by talking to that person. They're asking me questions or something while I'm trying to set something up. So I have to be extra careful.
Or if you're in a hurry, let's say you're doing a production run, and you can easily get distracted. Every time I find myself in a hurry or under pressure, you make mistakes that if you would have taken your time and breathed, you probably would have gotten the job done a lot faster.
Yeah. All right. I was trying to see. Rob Schuster says you can also change the post processor file in VCarve, so it will always do it the same way when you create your toolpaths. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a way to set it in VCarve, which might be the easiest for some people, but again, remember when you change that and you're running stuff, the more you have it raise up, especially in between, not just the safe Z going home, but the other Z, in between when it's moving, doing the rapids, you don't want to make it any higher than you have to. I mean, you got to make it high to make sure you're clearing stuff. If you're running that erratic, you probably need to re-optimize the program a little bit. You don't want to have that Z doing a lot of up and down time.
Yeah, I agree with Jerry Brown on that point as well. Safe Z is extremely annoying. The first thing I did was minimize my Safe Z to just barely skimming over the board, because it didn't really need to be every time it went up. I had it actually going up 2 inches in the beginning.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it's good and safe to do it that way, but it really adds a lot of time to the program. I think I run mine at like 200 thousandths or something.
Yep, that same here.
And that's that's not that much that it adds a lot of time.
Stephen D was also asking earlier, which I have some thoughts on this. If you could program the limit or depth by reading the temperature, because we were talking about temperature, and I mean, that would get a bit complicated, because number one, you would have to have some type of temperature sensor constantly on the bit, for one thing. And then I couldn't even, like Mark, I couldn't begin to tell you, it's way over my pay grade as well, whether it's even possible to, on the fly. I don't think it is with the Vectric software, to limit the stuff depending on the temperature. So you could probably have if you did have, one thing you could do is, if you had some type of temperature sensing apparatus and it would produce a high or a low signal, you could put it to one of your pins and have it in the program every so and so insert a line that would test for that pin, and if it was high, pause the program and wait for a response from you. But all of this is really a lot more trouble than it's worth. It's best to just measure the sensor and know your machine.
Yeah,
measure the bit if you care about the bit. I mean,
yeah. David Roby says, "Is the Z gap above material what you're talking about?" Yeah, when you go into VCarve Pro and click on that material setup over on the toolpath side, it has a place to put gap above material. And the rapid Z gaps above material. And mine is set, like I said, I have mine at 0.2. And then the plunge is set at 0.15, which I guess is the default. And then down there where it says home start position, and you can change that. There you can see it's by default set at 0, 0. So wherever you set your 0, 0 at to start with, that's what it'll go back to unless you change that. And then it says Z gap above material, and it is 0.7874, which is 20 millimeters, I believe. I believe that's what it is.
0.7874? Isn't that like 13 millimeters, something like that? Because 0.75 is 3/4 of an inch.
Well, maybe I'm wrong here.
You have it set that high over the material? Let's see, where is it?
Yeah, 7874 is 20 millimeters. No, that's what it's set at when it returns home.
Oh, gotcha.
For the last time, it's only at 0.2 on everything else.
Okay, yeah. Oh, that's what I was asking. The everything else part.
Yeah.
But
that's what I was saying. If you have it programmed to the lower left-hand corner, and you've got a clamp or something with a knob or something, and that finishes where it's gonna, when it comes up that 20 millimeters, it's gonna run across there. It may or may not be enough room. You may have to, but you can dry run, set the Z up above, cut air, and then that way you can see if it goes across the clamp.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's when you go to your, for those of you wondering where we're talking about, it's in the on the right side, the toolpaths menu in VCarve. There's a little button that says set, and then you'll see all your different Z gaps and your home start positions and all that, the gaps above material. And the one I focus on is the rapid Z gaps above material and the gap above the material. I make sure those are at the bare minimum that they could be, because I don't really need them. Again, I don't need that waste of time constantly going up and down.
Yep. And there's also, don't confuse the Safe Z thing in Vectric with the Safe Z thing in Mach 3. That's something different. And you need to learn how to use that too. We've talked about that before. There's, I believe, 3 different ways you can set. If y'all bear with me, I'll open up Mach 3 on here and take a look at that. I usually keep my Safe Z set to 1 inch in Mach 3, not in Vectric. Let's see if I can.
Oh, that's right. I was being baffled, and I go, why in the? I thought 3/4 was 12.7. Oh, that's right. I'm thinking bits, and it's half an inch is 12.7. My mind is.
Yeah, that's a half inch.
Why in the world does that not compute in my head?
Okay, so of course this one's on my desktop, so it's not even set up. But to set up the Safe Z in Mach 3, you go to the config button or the config at the top, come all the way down near the bottom of that drop down to set Safe Z, and there's 3 different ways you can have it set. The first one is just a little radio button. Safe Z DRO in machine coordinates. Safe Z DRO is in work coordinates. Safe Z is an incremental rise. And I have mine set to, well, I'm not sure because this one isn't really set, but I think I have it set to Safe Z in work coordinates, and I have mine set to 1 inch. So if I'm running a program and I have to stop it for some reason, and then I come back to finish on a, where you started a certain line, when you click, you scroll down to that line or type in the line number if you know what it is, and then you hit run from here. When you hit cycle start the first time, you'll get a little window that pops up and says that it's getting ready to make that move to X, Y, whatever it is, and it'll say what your safe Z is. So I keep mine set at 1. Like I said, if you don't have this set up, it's going to have that safe Z at 0. And then if you go to do what I just talked about, hit run from here, when it makes that move, it's going to be running across at 0, which means it's probably going to mark up your material. Well, no probably about it. It will mark up your material if you're running it across there. So that's another good thing to learn. Learn how to use that safe Z setting in Mach 3 as well. And, you know, I'm sure they have one in UC CNC too. And there's also a thing where it's an optional. I don't use it, but some of you may want to use it, where you can check a little box and it says go to safe Z when the stop button is hit. So every time you hit the stop button, it will raise up 1 inch. It'll go ahead and pull up out of the material. So, or I say 1 inch, whatever you have yours set for. All right. Any other questions before we get out of here tonight? We've had a pretty good crowd over there.
They're starting to talk about clamps and such. Are you going to have a show next week, Dave?
It's going
to be the 22nd.
Probably will. Next week's the 22nd, so that's the last Saturday before the deadline for the challenge and also before Christmas.
Yep.
And then, of course, the 29th, the Saturday 2 weeks from today, will be the one where we talk about the results from the challenge.
They'd be out on that one. Shucks. Yeah. A lot of people on holiday those next.
Well,
next
I mean, I could, I mentioned that I'd do it on the 29th. I could, you guys in the chat can
it's
let
up
me
to
know
them.
what you think. If you'd rather I wait and do it after the first of the year, because, it's not
all
like
the kids, all the kids are out of school from next weekend for a week or two until the 3rd of January. So that's what I was thinking.
I could, we could either do it the 29th or I could do it that first Saturday in 2019, which is January 5th.
Yep.
They give me more time to
review them all.
Look over the entries and stuff.
Yeah, because they all come in last minute, no doubt.
Well, it's kind of surprising. Either a bunch of people are waiting till the last minute, or Rob Schuster's going to win it all. Because
I'm definitely waiting till the last minute.
And this time last year, I already had several videos. So I don't know. We'll see. I talk about it every week on the show. So, and I've got stuff listed and videos out. So
I've been plugging it as well on my show.
So anyway. Yeah, Rob, you're in first place. Yeah. Bad news is you're the only one that's entered. But Rob had a great project. Check it out. I've already created a playlist. I shared it on Facebook the other day, but there's a playlist. I don't know if I put the link down below or not. I think I did. Maybe I didn't. But yeah, check out Rob's. Okay, Jerry Brown says mine is coming, so we'll see. I think Jerry entered last year. We'll see.
Mark, that means he's also in last place.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way. I try to be, I'm a half full.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Peter says he was just drawing his while he was watching. So good. Good. Yeah, Peter's some tough competition. He's pretty good on these challenges.
Oh, yeah.
Watch him.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. Well, I guess we're going to get out of here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Javi, thank you for helping me out tonight.
Not at all. Happy to help, Dave.
Like I said, I didn't mention the links below, but down in the show notes, hit the show more thing. I do have links to the website where you can learn how to enter the Gatton CNC Christmas Challenge if you aren't sure. And hope you'll get out in your shop and make something. I'm not doing it because of the challenge, but I have been saying for years I'm going to make something, some kind of plywood thing to, put out in the yard or whatever. Well, I started working on a Grinch. I found a good thing, and I figure I'm going to get like one of those 2x4 half-inch plywood things from Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever. So I'll make the thing right around 45 inches tall or whatever. But I couldn't find, Grinches, I had to find I got a good picture, but it had a lot of different colors in it, so it didn't bitmap trace that well. So I'm spending the time to clean it up and all that. No, nobody can have the file when I get done. Draw it yourself.
That's okay. Patrick's not here.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be a gimme guy. Come on.
He always asks as a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. He always asks for like the test, draw a square with a hole in the middle of it or something. He'll ask for the file. But yeah, that's one thing you won't see me do. I won't ever ask anybody if they offer it, I might take it. But I never, when somebody posts something, I don't say, "Hey, I'd like to have that file," because I just draw it myself. I like spending time doing that. That's what I did CAD and 3D modeling and stuff for years. So I don't. No, Mark, there won't be a next week's show bitmap tracing on the Grinch. I better hurry up though, because I gotta, I'm probably about halfway done with getting it all cleaned up, all the little stuff and connecting lines and stuff like that. And cutting it's not a big deal, but it's the painting that I'm dreading. I don't want to paint. I hate painting. But if I just stuck a raw plywood thing out, Grinch shaped, I don't think it'd be too cool. They think that guy is a Grinch. He don't want even afford paint. So, all right, we're out of here, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a thumbs up on the way out. It's much appreciated. Or if you didn't like it, go ahead and hit the thumbs down. I don't care about that either. Either way, whatever flips your switch.
Yep.
All righty. Good night, everybody. We'll see y'all next week.
Have a great week.